What's up, travel bugs, and welcome to today's video. If you watched our previous vlog on our trip to Seattle, you'd know that we took a trip to the Pacific Northwest for the first time. In addition to visiting Seattle, we visited Olympic National Park for 3 days. In this video, we're sharing how we spent the first 2 days of our trip at the national park exploring the Hoh Rainforest and Rialto Beach and some other small stops along the way. Since it was our first time visiting Olympic National Park, we decided to spend most of our time exploring the northern part of the park, which contains most of the popular hikes and scenes for first-time visitors. Our first stop on our trip was the Port Angeles Visitor Center so we could get our national park passport books stamped. What's up, travel bugs? We have made it to Olympic National Park. We just visited the main visitor center and now we're going to go do some waterfall hikes. So our first stop today is along the Elwha River Valley of Olympic National Park. We're going to be doing the Madison Creek Falls hike. It's a 0.2-mile hike that takes you to an absolutely beautiful waterfall, so we're really excited to get to our first stop today. Madison Falls is located in the Elwha River Valley area of the national park. This area is known for its beautiful views of the Elwha River, hiking trails, and viewing the salmon population. Prior to 1994, 2 dams blocked the salmon population from accessing the Elwha River. When the dams were removed, within a month the salmon were thriving in the river again. Today there are many beautiful hikes that can be accessed in the Elwha River Valley area. Due to a recent road washout, parking is only available at the Madison Falls trailhead for the other trails in this area. After visiting Madison Falls, we started to drive towards our Airbnb in Beaver, Washington, and took in some of the beautiful views along the way. We couldn't help but stop and take a look at the mountains where we could see a rainbow and the distinct line where elevation was just high enough for snow to start forming. We also stopped at Lake Crescent to take in the lake views. There are several hiking trails at the lake, but we unfortunately weren't able to hike any during our trip. Popular trails include the Mount Storm King Trail, Spruce Railroad Trail, and Merrimer Falls Trail. We were also lucky to see a herd of Roosevelt elk on our drive to our Airbnb. Roosevelt elk are the largest subspecies of elk in North America and are primarily found in the Pacific Northwest and into northern California and Canada. Roosevelt elk are commonly seen in Olympic National Park, particularly in the Hoh Rainforest. Good morning, travel bugs. Today is our second day here at Olympic National Park. Last night we stayed at an Airbnb in a little town called Beaver on the western side of the peninsula, and we stayed in this really adorable tiny home. We loved it. It had all the perfect amenities that we needed for the night. Today our plans are to go to the Hoh Rainforest and explore some of the tide pools at Rialto Beach. We're now at the Hoh Rainforest. This is one of 4 rainforests in the Olympic Peninsula,
And this is considered a temperate rainforest, meaning that you have milder summers and winters, and they get about 13 feet of rain each year here at the rainforest, which is incredible. And this also creates a really unique ecosystem where you have a lot of mosses and lichens that are growing. There's also just so much moisture in the air and in the ground. And so we are exploring today two trails, the Hall of Mosses and the Spruce Nature Trail, to see what kinds of things we can find. The Hoh Rainforest is also an old-growth forest, meaning that trees in this forest are hundreds, even up to 1,000 years old, and the Hoh Rainforest is among the last remaining old-growth forests in the Pacific Northwest. this really interesting formation here is the result of a nurse log. So when a tree falls here in the rainforest, decomposers start to break the log down. Now, since there's so much moisture, there's a lot of mosses and lichens that grow, and there's also a chance for the seeds of trees to embed themselves in the log and to start to germinate. And so what will happen with the log as it continues to decompose is that the young tree's roots will grow around it, but eventually the log will completely decompose, and it creates what's called a nurse log colonnade, where we see the trees kind of looking like they're standing up on stilts, which is really cool. So this is a really interesting feature that we've been seeing a lot of here in the rainforest, and it's kind of a neat example of the circle of life kind of in action, because out of the dead trees are new trees, and these ones would have definitely been pretty old, seeing by how large they are. So we have just arrived to Rialto Beach. This is our first time going to the Pacific Ocean, so we are really excited. We're gonna go on the hike to the hole in the wall where there's some tide pools, so let's get going. If you want to get the best experience at the hole in the wall and exploring the tide pools, you have to be mindful of the tide schedule. If the tide is too high, you won't be able to see the tide pools and you won't be able to walk through hole in the wall because the water will be too high. You have to plan your hike so you arrive at the hole in the wall when the tide is low. It is a 1.5-mile hike along the rocky beach to get to hole in the wall, so make sure to check the tide schedule and consider how long it's going to take you to hike to get there so you can arrive at hole in the wall at the best time for you to explore the tide pools. So getting to and from the hole in the wall was a bit of an adventure right in this spot. It seems like there's a stream or some water that's flowing out of the forest and onto the beach, and it's left this really big divot in the rocks. And so we had to crawl up over all of these driftwood trees, and it was a little treacherous at times. It was a lot of scrambling and trying to find your footing and making sure you're stepping someplace that's secure, but we were able to do it, and it was an adventure going to the hole in the wall and back. So as we're approaching the hole in the wall where all the tide pools are, we're starting to see some under the sea life on the rocks. We're seeing different kinds of barnacles and other different types of organisms that are attached to the rocks. So we're getting really excited to see what the tide pools have to offer. Like walking through.
So we did some exploring of the tide pools, and since we have the GoPro, we were able to get some really cool underwater footage and photos of the different animals that we were able to see. We saw 6 starfish, which was really cool. We saw a bunch of different kinds of barnacles, snails. Throughout the tide pools, we saw a bunch of these giant green anemones, which was really cool because when the tide was going in and out, you could actually see them opening and closing, which was really neat. So as we're walking around, we're actually stepping on all of the different grasses and plants that would be at the bottom of the ocean. And it sounds kind of funny that the ones that we're walking on, this rockweed, kind of pop when you step on them because their leaves seem to be filled with like an air pocket. When visiting the tide pools, make sure to be safe. Be careful of slippery rocks, unsuspecting waves, and the rising tide. The tide will rise quickly. We were there when it reached high tide, and the hole in the wall definitely becomes impassable. There are lots of plants and animals that thrive in the tide pools, so make sure to practice leaving no trace and do not pick up or touch any of the animals. So as we were walking along the beach back from Hole in the Wall, I heard a very, very distinct bird call, the sound of a bald eagle. And there are 2 bald eagles in this tree right behind me. And it's so cool that today we were surprised by hermit crabs, surprised by starfish, and now we've been surprised by bald eagles. Thank you so much for watching today's video. In our next video, we'll be sharing the rest of our trip to Olympic National Park, where we visit Hurricane Ridge and Sole Duck Falls. Don't forget to like and subscribe because it really supports our channel, and we hope to see you next time, Travel Bugs.